Welcome, everyone, and welcome back. We're here to introduce you to the sky, the stars, the planets, much as if we were sitting around a campfire looking up, or as originally planned, the meeting at the Queen Elizabeth Planetarium, which hopefully we'll be able to do in a few months. Then sort of step outside and hopefully point at the real sky. So that's what we kind of hope to do. But first and foremost, these sessions are all about looking, what you can see with your eyes. No telescope is required. Binoculars are really great if you have them. Give them a try. We won't be covering the hot topics like black holes, dark matter, dark energy, or any of that stuff, because we typically have guest speakers at our monthly meetings who talk on those topics. One of the things that I will always say and say again is it's really crucial for you to make a point to step outside just about every clear evening as possible, just to familiarize yourself with the sky and get to recognize the patterns and notice that Jupiter is out there right now in the south. And then, what are the stars around it? Because next year they're actually going to be different because Jupiter will have moved on. So get out there and reinforce the names of the brightest stars that you're going to learn and their constellations as well. Berta and I have tried to design this so that it's a bit of a carousel. It repeats the topics every sort of 15, 16 months, something like that. But each of these sessions is hopefully standalone so that you don't have to feel that you've lost anything by not having been here before. We also try and help you through these sessions achieve the certificate and pin from the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada for the Explore the Universe certificate. And you can just go to the website, download the PDF. There's links on the main webpage that is for this meeting. The RASC, as we call the Astronomy Society, is our parent organization. We've got more than 5,000 members across the country, more than 300 here in Edmonton. Please find our webpage, go to join the Facebook page, see what people are doing. So big thank you to Berta, who helps me out here every month. And it's really nice to see how much Berta's observing skills have picked up compared to a short 2 years ago. So she's working on her Introduction to Deep Sky and Lunar certificates, as well as helping out at the University Observatory. There are also introductory sessions at at rasc.ca, where you can also find some recorded sessions. So with that, we'll exit out of here and we will begin our monthly. So there's some neat things happening this month. So here we go, lots of cycles. So we're going to be looking at the usual satellites, what's up in the sky a little bit, and realizing that sunset will soon be oh so early, 4:40 p.m. But on the real advantage of that is the ability to go outside right after supper and look at the sky and get in some observing well before bedtime. So I'll be talking a little bit about the nearly total lunar eclipse coming up. But let's start with satellites. As always, the International Space Station is the brightest satellite that's up there. And it is about 400 kilometers high, but it's so big, not quite football field size, that there's a lot of light reflects off of it. So this is sunlight reflecting off of it. And it moves across the sky like a high-flying airplane. And we've got some really great evening passes throughout the month. Later in the month of November, as you can see, all around 6, 7 p.m. And as early as 5 p.m. as well. What I suggest is you log into heavensabove.com and make sure you change your location to Edmonton, and then you can get the actual timing. When you click on one of those passes, it'll print you up a star chart, and with the path and the times that where the satellite, in this case the International Space Station, is traveling. So what I've added onto this chart are the cardinal directions for south and east. And so if you face south and hold this, print out this sheet, the overhead is the middle of the chart. And we've still got just past, heading into the west, the remnants of the summer triangle. So Vega, Deneb, Altair, and that's slowly setting. But the eye-catching one is, of course, Jupiter, modestly low towards the south. And then the next brightest object that's there is the planet Saturn. And so they're now in the sort of the starting to set phase, and bit by bit, as we head into December, they'll get lost in the glow from the sun, and they'll show up again next year in late summer, with Jupiter significantly farther along to the left, and Saturn just shifting about to where Jupiter is. And so the constellation and stars of this month, as we look east, now notice what I did is I rotated the chart to put east at the bottom. So now we're facing east, and up high overhead is the W of Cassiopeia, and the nice bow, as in bow and arrow, of the three bright stars of Andromeda. Got Perseus sitting here, and then the bright Capella. So Capella's one of the star names that should become very familiar to you over time. We see it a lot here in summer. It hugs the northern horizon, twinkling away, and in winter it rises up and will become overhead by midnight or so. But in the early-ish evening, as you look east, we've got Aldebaran, which is an orangey star. It's a red supergiant. And then if the sky is particularly clean, you'll see a tiny little fuzzy twinkling group. If you've got good eyes, you'll actually see them as a tiny little dipper. And many people first mistake the Pleiades for, oh, I saw the Little Dipper. Well, it is a Little Dipper. It is in the shape of a Little Dipper, but it's actually a star cluster, one of the nearer ones to Earth, called the Pleiades or Seven Sisters. And in Japanese, it is called Subaru, which is what they named the company after the stars. So what we're looking for this month in particular is Triangulum and Aries, and so below the main arc of Andromeda, and these two fainter ones I'll zoom in a moment, are sometimes a little harder to see. These two part of Aries is a lot brighter, and what we're going to focus on is the planet Uranus down below. So we're going to zoom in. And when I first started astronomy, I was looking for a constellation with this rhombus shape, a slanted sort of diamond or a slanted box. And it wasn't until I finally got a set of star charts that I realized, oh, this is two constellations, not one. So I had invented my own. And Triangulum is, well, quite literally a triangle. And of course, so is every other group of three stars, but this one is actually called Triangulum. So down below it is what I call the hockey stick of Aries. Get a little closer here. So the two main bright stars are Aries, and the third one here. But I see it. To me, it's like, well, that's pretty close to a perfect hockey stick as you can get. Blade tilted down to the lower right. So of course, Aries, from our Greek ancestry, is the ram. So here it is here, back from Bayer in the 1500s. Here's the three stars, and everything else is, as you can see, completely made up. And this thing looks nothing like a sheep. But there we have it. That's what they put in there. But it's a hockey stick to me. Now, Uranus is just down a bit. You'll need binoculars to see it, but technically the real sort of cool thing is you can actually see it with the unaided eye from a dark site. Notice the Pleiades off to the left, so our hockey stick, it's not quite a guide, but you can see swooping with binoculars. It's an obvious, beautiful little dipper. So technically it is possible, or it could have been possible for a super observant person to have found Uranus a few thousand years ago, but no one did, and it was left up to William Herschel to pick up in 1781. And at first they thought it was a comet. He just was not expecting to find a planet. It was only until someone else worked out the orbit that they realized, oh, this is a planet. And so at first he called it something like Georgius Sidereum, or George's star, because King George ended up giving him a pension. So Herschel, just like a lot of people throughout history, depended on the rich and the royalty to give them a pension so that they could continue doing their astronomy. But it was eventually called Uranus by the astronomers there. So it's like, it's a bizarre name. So where does that come from? Well, Jupiter, or Zeus, his father in the mythology is Saturn, and Saturn's father is Uranus, god of the sky. So that's also one of the reasons why measuring things in the sky is sometimes called uranometria. But in a small scope, you can actually see it looks a tad greenish, and it has a flatness to it that stars tend to sparkle, and Uranus will be a sort of a flat, small, very small dot. So that'll be the thing to drop down. As you get down in this area, you can see there's three stars of similar brightness, and Uranus is going to be the one in the middle. Okay, so that's that planet and where it came from, and now we're over to Berta.
Hi, hello. So I'm gonna take over from Alister and continue with some of the objects. So he has explained the sky that we can see right now. So now I'm gonna zoom in some objects in the sky that may be interesting to see this month of November. I'm gonna follow objects that are listed in the Explore the Universe certificate. It's something that you can download for free in the RASC, the National Royal Astronomical Society of Canada webpage. It's called Explore the Universe, and it's kind of like a scavenger hunt of the sky. And so the first items to look at are constellations, which is what Alister has mentioned. So you can go and look for the constellations for the fall. And then the second item to be, the second list of things to be looking at are related to the moon. So today I'm going to highlight one of the Mare of the moon. that can be seen around the 7th and 8th day, and also I'm going to highlight a crater. So starting with the Mare, today we are going to be looking at the Mare Vaporum. It's a Mare that is kind of in the middle of the face of the moon, as you look at it right now in the picture. And Alister, if you don't mind pointing to it, I have a nice.
Sorry. I thought you were going.
Yes, I have an arrow to it. So it's not a big Mare. This Mare is around 242 kilometers across. Compared to other ones, it's actually not so big or distinctly darker than the face of the moon, but it's still something that you can see, certainly with binoculars. The name of this Mare, like many other names of the Mare in the moon, were given by astronomer Gibboni Riccoli in 1651. And the best time to observe this Mare is around the 7th to 8th day in the moon cycle. That will be corresponding to more or less the first quarter moon. And that's basically where the terminator, which is the separation between the day side of the moon and the night side of the moon, falls more or less around the middle of the moon, which is closer to this Mare. So you will be able to see it a little bit more pronounced, because it will have darker and clearer areas. If you look at it when the moon is full, all the features on the surface of the moon appear a little bit washed out, and they are not so easy to see details. So it's actually any feature that you want to see, it's better to look at it when the terminator, that means the separation between day and night, is closer to them. That's when we see most of their features. This month in November, the first quarter is going to happen around Remembrance Day. So if you happen to be outside and it happens to be a clear day, the first quarter moon is normally up in the sky around this time. You can see it kind of passing the middle of the sky, the meridian. So just go out, and if you have binoculars, just challenge yourself to locate Mare Vaporum in the moon. Thank you, Alister. Thank you. So, and another another feature in the moon that we wanted to highlight this month is this crater. And I actually have no idea how to pronounce it. So maybe I'm going to ask Alister or anyone who comes to my help.
It's Ptolemaeus.
Ptolemaeus.
Because it's after the astronomer Ptolemy. But it's,
okay.
Yeah, that PT is tough.
Oh, it's tough, yes. There is a lot of, Ptolemaeus, which is a beautiful crater to be looking at. It's big, and it's a prominent crater with a wall plane. So it basically has a big plane in the center, and it has nice walls around. And again, you can see in this picture that I have taken, this is how the 8 days old moon will look on the 12th of November. So you can see the terminator, which is the line that separates the day and the night side of the moon, and how all the objects around the terminator actually have very nice, darker and clearer areas. They are very well defined. So that's always the best time to look at craters or Mare. And the interesting thing of this crater is that it's also accompanied by other two, Alphonsus and Arschel, I guess. Mm-hmm. And Arschel is not as big, but it's a much deeper crater. You can see by the shadow in the picture that is the walls are higher, and it has also a little mountain in the middle. So there are interesting features, and there are craters that are easily enough to be found. So again, if you go out and look at the first quarter moon, or maybe a little bit past first quarter, around Remembrance Day, the moon should be up in the sky, more or less down south around 7 to 8 or 9 at night. So just go and challenge yourself to look for these craters. Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna continue down the list of objects listed in the Explore the Universe certificate. The next ones that come in the list are the planets, but Alister has covered that. So I'm gonna go to what we call deep sky objects, which is a big basket that holds a lot of different objects of different categories inside. This month, we have decided to highlight something called the Wild Duck Cluster. It will be towards the west. Just if you remember, Alister has pointed at the beginning the summer triangle. One of the stars in the summer triangle is Altair, which is the brightest star in the constellation Aquila. So if you look a little bit more to the west from Aquila, you will find this constellation called Scutum, which is a seal, a mythical figure associated with this constellation is a seal. It's a small constellation with not so many bright stars, so it's not very well known, but it's actually a very rich area of the sky when it comes to stars because the Milky Way goes through it. And the star cluster that we want to highlight today is M11. So thank you, Alister. He's pointed to you where it is this yellow ball. So the best way to locate it is because if you are looking with binoculars, it's 4 degrees west of Lambda Aquilae, which is what Alister is just pointing at right now. It's one star that is bright enough that you can actually see by eye. And so if you move with your binoculars around 4 degrees west of that, you will end up seeing M11. It's a cluster. It's a group of stars a little bit brighter than the ones in the background because there are a lot of stars in the background, but this one's a little bit brighter. And the brighter of them form kind of like a triangle like that. So that's the name comes because this triangle can be thought of a group of geese or ducks flying away or migrating. So it's called the Wild Duck Cluster. It's around 6,120 light years away. So it's relatively far, but it's still very bright and it's a beautiful thing to see with binoculars.
So here's a binocular view, and the Lambda Aquilae is this blue one, this little chain, and then you just drop down and it's this fuzzy star.
Mm-hmm. That is really beautiful, Alister. This is a picture from Alister. You can see how rich the Milky Way is there in stars and nebulosity. Beautiful. You wouldn't be able to see this by eye, but yeah, it's a beautiful.
Yeah, and but by eye, it's a brighter part of the Milky Way, and then in binoculars, this star cloud looks very similar to this picture. It's remarkable.
Okay. And this is a picture that I've taken from Wikipedia that is zooming way more into the cluster. So you can see again all the stars in the background, so many of them. But the clusters, the stars in this open cluster are a little bit brighter, bluer, and they form this kind of triangular shape. And so another object that we have selected is actually one of my favorites, I have to say, to look at least from Edmonton. And the first time that I look at it is when I was trying to complete this Explore the Universe certificate myself. And so I just went to Perseus, which is now very much in the east. Alister has pointed to it before when he was explaining the constellations. And so there is a bright star in the center of Perseus, well, more like a little bit higher, called Mirfak. It's kind of a yellowish star, especially clearly yellow if you look at it with binoculars. And it has a really pretty star field around. It's a star cluster again, but it's much wider than the Wild Duck. The Wild Duck with binoculars looks like that dot, but in this one you can actually see all the stars around. this yellow star. And so it makes a beautiful sight because they are really spread, but there is still quite a lot of them. And they're spread making beautiful shapes. So you have to find this Mare star that can clearly be seen by eye. Is Alpha Persei. And this star cluster will fill pretty much your whole binoculars. It's not as dense as what we have seen before, but it's really pretty. And it's around 560 light years away. And again, this is a picture that I have taken from the internet. So the star in the center is Mare, although certainly with my binoculars, I see it much more yellow than that. And the stars around, these bluish stars, are the ones that form this open cluster Alpha Persei group that make pretty shapes in the sky.
If I can add, Berta, one of the things that the imagination does in terms of fanciful flight is I've always seen this as a sort of classic dragon, as in the snake dragon, Chinese dragon, where you've got the tail here, and it just swoops down to the lower body, and then it rears up to the head, and Mare is right on the nose.
Mm-hmm. That's something that probably will motivate my kids to go out and look next time that I point at it, if I ask them to look for a dragon in the sky. So I will keep that in mind. Yeah, because they will for sure see it. Yeah, it does look like a dragon, I have to say, yes. Or some creature like a serpent, or yeah. All right.
Okay.
And so now moving on in the certificate, the last list of objects to be looking at are double and multiple stars. So this month we have selected 2 that are in Cygnus, both in the constellation Cygnus that lays, as Alister has said, now towards the west, and but it's still really up in the sky and clearly visible near the zenith at any time between 9 and midnight. You can find it clearly. The first one is what we call Omicron 1 Cygnus. So there is Omicron 1 and Omicron 2, but we are concentrated only in Omicron 1, which is a triple star that can be seen by binoculars. The second brightest component is 30 Cygni, so it's another star. So Omicron 1 is a double star, and 30 Cygni adds to it, making kind of like a triple star. And the 3 of them make a hockey stick figure, and they all have different colors, so they are nice to be look at in the night. They are not physically associated, so even though they look together in the sky, that's by chance, because they are actually not orbiting each other or anything like that. They are independent stars, and they're around 750 light years away. And again, this is a picture taken from Wikipedia. So the first 2 is Omicron 1, and the one on the top that is also bright is 30 Cygni. And you can notice in the picture how the colors, there is one yellowish one, there is one bluish one, and then one whitish one. So they're nice and beautiful to look at. And if we move to the last one.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Alister. So, and then we stay again in Cygnus. So this constellation is so pretty, you know, it's worth to be looking at for hours, no end, because it's full of,
yes,
you can have everything in there. Anyway, so there is this 16 Cygni. It's an impressive pair of stars located near Iota, which is in the, you can see it in this map, and also Theta, but Theta is not labeling here, but Alister knows where it is. So you near the wing of the swan, one of the near the end of the wing, you can find this pair in there, and they're kind of close together, so you you need your binoculars to be mounted on a tripod so that they are steady, because if your hand's a little bit shaky, you won't be able to separate them. Or even better, if you happen to have a telescope, look at them with a telescope. These stars are actually related to each other. They are a closed binary system, so they're actually orbiting around each other. And just as a fun fact, an exoplanet has been discovered orbiting one of these stars that are very much like our sun. They are around 69 light years away. And I think I have a picture of them again. As you can see, they are a nice close pair, similar in brightness and color, but still brighter than the surroundings, so nice to be looking at. And I think I'm done with my part. So unless anyone has a question, I can hand the baton again to Alister.
Okay, thank you, Berta. Okay, we happened to land just about perfectly on the best morning view of Mercury that you can get in the entire year. Mercury is one of the planets, of course, that is in the Explore the Universe certificate. Mercury can be difficult to see because it hugs so close to the sun as an inner planet. Never strays far from the sun, so we can only see it in the evening or the morning. And it's all about the angles which Mercury's orbit makes with our local horizon. And in fall mornings, this angle is very steep, so Mercury sits up nicely. It's the dot right here. It doesn't look particularly bright in this image because it's fighting the twilight, but you'll notice there are no other stars around. It's ends up being well, much fainter than the mighty Jupiter that's in the evening sky. But if you go out now or in the morning, and it's around 7:30 a.m. or so, is when it's at its best. It's sitting in the blue zone above the orange that's close to the horizon. And essentially you'll think, oh, that's just a plane coming in to Edmonton. And then it's like, okay, it doesn't seem to be moving, but it's just sort of just sitting there. So it's bright enough to be mistaken for a distant airplane. And so it's you don't need binoculars. It's super easy. It is at its maximum right now. That being said, in about 10 days, it'll drop almost out of sight and back in between the Earth and the Sun. If you have a small telescope, you can actually see phases similar to, like, it goes through crescent to full in a very short period of time, in just a matter of 2.5 to 3 weeks. So this is a view which is almost duplicated. It's St. George's Crescent. So it's on the west side of town, just south of Stony Plain Road, and just a little east of 142nd Street. And it's got a nice, beautiful little viewing area. There's a bench, and one of the things that is new to this view is the new Walterdale Bridge is sitting in there. But this is from a few years ago. Yeah, so it's Mercury is easy peasy at for the next 7 days, and then poof, it's going to be difficult again, and we won't get another probably really good look at it until spring in the evening. Next, I'll be talking a little bit about the upcoming lunar eclipse on November 1819. Lunar eclipses are wonderful to look at. There's no danger to your eyes because what is happening, this is a lunar eclipse, not a solar eclipse. So it is the moon that's entering into the shadow that the Earth casts. So the sun is out there, brilliant as anything, hits the Earth, and the Earth casts a shadow, and the moon enters into the shadow and becomes a fairly dark, rosy to coppery color. The media like to hype things up and call it blood moon, but it really is more coppery than red. But sometimes the red can come out, and the color comes from the fact that if you're on the Earth at either the top or bottom of it, it would be right at sunrise or sunset, and so the colors of the sunlight coming through the atmosphere, as you know, you get nice orangey, deep orange glow at sunset to the sky, and that light filters through and manages to reach the moon. And this is somewhat similar progress to what we're going to see. So as the moon enters the shadow of the Earth, it'll enter with the moon getting darker on the left side, and then it'll slowly be eaten up more and more. And as you can tell from the angle of the shadow, although it might be similar to a crescent moon at some point, this arc here is a lot sort of straighter, and that's because it's the actual edge of the Earth's shadow. And then once you're in eclipse, you get this lovely orangey copper to sometimes pink. Now this one is oh so not quite perfectly totally eclipsed. The bottom edge is just gets direct sunlight, so it'll be a very bright bottom Cheshire smile with a beautiful copper glow. I heartily recommend binoculars. It's by far my favorite instrument to use when looking at a lunar eclipse. Our brains are wired for using two eyes, and the binocular field of view of typical binoculars is about the size of the page. So it would look very, very similar to this, except it's of course got that wonderful quality that a live view is so much nicer than video or pictures. And then the moon continues to move on past the Earth's shadow and pops out the other side in sort of a reverse sequence. Now I've got the times here. Yeah. So it's not quite total, but the other thing I recommend, if you can do it, is to drive out of town 45 minutes or so, because what will happen is that as the moon gets eclipsed, the night sky sort of turns on, because the full moon casts a lot of light all over the place, and it actually turns the sky a very faint blue. But when it gets eclipsed going into the shadow of the Earth, the stars come out. And so it's really cool to just see the Milky Way appear gradually as head into the eclipse. And then and it goes away again. But if you can't go out to the country, what I really recommend is, you can do this as long as it's not bone-chilling cold, but good slippers and a house coat, and you can step outside. Now, the thing is that all the calendars and everything will have full moon is on the 19th, and the eclipse actually happens on the 19th, but it's in the very wee hours. So it is actually on the late evening of the 18th. Lots and lots of people have made this mistake before. I missed a partial eclipse when I was first starting out, and it's just like, oh, that was last night. Oh, but it starts at 18 minutes after midnight and ends at 3:45 in the morning. But it's always the first half that is the neatest thing to watch, and you can just step outside and look with your eyes. You don't even need binoculars, even from the city. It's quite noticeable, and just every sort of 10 to 15 minutes, starting just after midnight, go out and look, and it's like, oh yeah, there's a bite, a bigger bite, a bigger bite, and then where the best and deepest part of the eclipse will be from just before 2 o'clock to just after 2 o'clock in the morning. And if you can wrangle a late afternoon nap, it really helps. Either staying up past midnight to 2 o'clock, but it's a pity it's not on a Friday night, but we don't have control over that. Then the other trick is November, especially mid-November, is probably amongst the lousiest weather at the time of year. But sometimes we just get completely lucky, and even what looks like a poor weather that's forecast, we get lots of little breaks, and sometimes it just whoop, pops out for a few minutes and then disappears under cloud again. So that'll be a very nice event for November. The next total eclipse is only a few months later, May 15th. And that happens in evening twilight, so it's not quite as spectacular. If you're out in the country, it doesn't get dark enough at that point for the Milky Way to come out. So it'll be a neat thing to see from the city on the evening of May 15th. And then the next partial is a couple of years after. So eclipses come by, not quite every year, but every other year we usually get one. And yeah.